Trust and the Muungano, the community federations in Kenya, have been members of SDI for the past 5 years. They first came to India in the year 2000 during the global launch of the Secure Tenure campaign of UN Habitat. Over the years, inspired by what they have seen the other SDI affiliates do, they have built all these skills amongst the slum communities in Nairobi and other Kenyan cities. Communities undertake data collection, they set up savings groups, and they conduct exchanges. Very often they are involved in designing house models, exhibiting them, and inviting their municipalities to come and join this process of exploring new ways of doing things. Many of the communities have even begun to build houses, construct toilets, and build internal roads within the settlement. Data collection or enumeration plays a very important role in the information gathering within federations. In all informal settlements, there is a complex and confused relationship between the official landowner, the person who manages the land, the people who build the structures, those who rent them, and then who sublet them. Unless this complex relationship is untangled and a group of people take on the leadership to arbitrate the interests of each of these groups, no real development can take place. In fact, many large development projects have broken down because they did not address this process. So SDI, and in this case the Kenyan Federation, brings this capacity to any project that the Kenyan government or the international agency might want to take in slum upgrading in Kenya. In November 2003, I went to Kibera, which is said to be the largest settlement of informal dwellings in Africa. My most powerful memory of that visit was the encroachments that I saw on both sides of a very important railway line linking Kenya and Uganda.
The bylaw says people should be away from this line 100 meters.
Yes.
But now you can see, and many times they face eviction threats.
The Kenyan federations had just begun to work with one of the villages in Kibera.
Yeah, where do we go now?
When I visited them, I suggested that they should plan an exchange to Mumbai and see what the slum dwellers had done in partnership with the Indian Railways.
You should tell them that in Bombay, we work with 35,000 households who live like this, who live 5 feet from the track, and we negotiated a relocation for them.
Then, in March 2004, some of the Kenyan delegations couldn't come for an SDI meeting held in Mumbai. The Kenyan Railways had posted eviction notices to the residents along the railway track, and demolitions had already begun. There was panic, fear, anger, and lots of hostility towards the railways. Pamoja Trust and the federations, however, went to the railways and requested a dialogue to work out a planned solution to this crisis. It was at that time that they spoke about the partnership between the Indian Railways and the slum federations in India. Officials from the Land Ministry of Kenya and the Railways agreed to join Pamoja Trust and the Muungano for a visit to India on the invitation of NSTF. And so on April 2nd, 2004, a delegation of 7 Kenyans arrived in Mumbai. There were 3 very senior officials from Kenyan Railways, a very senior planner from the Ministry of Lands, a professor from the university who is an architect and a planner and has worked with Pamoja Trust in the past, Jane Veru from Pamoja Trust, and a leader from the Muungano. We spent that first day sharing our experiences as the Indian Alliance. We spoke about how federations of communities collect data, gather evidence about structures, and produce a database that they then ask the municipality or the landowner and the government to validate. During this time, they set up savings groups and they start to discuss how they want to plan their future settlements, be it in that same place or in a relocated site. We spoke about how 5 years ago there was a huge crisis of public transport. The Railway Commissioner of Safety wanted to stop the trains on one of the most important tracks. He said that the tracks weren't maintained properly and the encroachments were so close to the track that it was going to be impossible to have trains running in such a situation. It was at that time that a partnership between the Federation, the state government, and the Indian Railways produced a pilot relocation strategy which moved 900 households from next to the railway track into a transit housing some distance away from that location. And it was something that was designed, planned, executed, and presently managed by those communities. The next day, we went to visit the Central Railway at their office in this beautiful building in South Mumbai. We met the chief engineer of the Central Railways, who many years ago had done structure verification with Jokin along those railway tracks. After introductions, Mr. Garud showed the delegation the documents that he and Jokin had signed together with the state government and how all the data that was collected by the communities was now the basis of their planning for the future railway projects. He spoke frankly of the crisis of managing the tracks and the problems that encroachments produce for such maintenance. He also accepted that it was only as the last resort that they had begun to explore this partnership with the Federation. In that discussion, there were many points that the Kenyan officials and Mr. Garud exchanged. He then invited them to accompany him on a train ride. While we waited on the platform of the main station, the Kenyan process achieved a great milestone. The senior planner from the Land Ministry, struck by Mr. Garud's attitude and ownership of this data, suggested to Jane Veru that all future enumerations should be joint surveys between his ministry and...
Very important. That's an important level.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
The train ride was about 45 minutes. Some of us sat around and looked at the tracks that had been cleared, the slums beyond that. Others discussed about real estate management of the railways and how the tracks have been laid and how the safety zone and the inclines are worked out. But on one side, the Federation leader from the Mungano got another milestone for himself. He is the president of an informal market on the outskirts of Kibera. He showed us his ID card and talked about how important it is for them. He also spoke about the frustration of being unable to have a dialogue with the municipality. The planner assured him that he would try and set up this meeting. He said this was not only good for his market, but might provide some insights on the land management policy that he was planning in Kenya. Once we reached the station, the visit to the relocated sites began. There were two sets of community leaders that the delegation met. First, the people who live in the transit or the temporary housing, and the other, communities who have already moved into permanent housing. In both instances, people talked about the whole crisis and how they were relocated and their pride of doing all this. They also spoke about the problems and the difficulties that they face now that they are relocated. But they feel both energetic and confident that with the support of the network, they would be able to address these challenges and use this relocation to their family's advantage. The next visit was to a construction site where the Federation is building 900 tenements for future relocations. There they met a senior retired planner who had participated in writing out the slum rehabilitation policy of the government of Maharashtra. And our senior planner from Kenya and he had long discussions about what of these processes could be picked up for the Kenyan land policy. Finally, they met the additional commissioner of MMRDA, the Mumbai Metropolitan Regional Development Authority. All the issues of public transport and the railway relocations in Mumbai are part of a larger project that is being coordinated by this institution. They found this particular visit very inspirational. In the last meeting in Baikala, the oldest community center in Mumbai, they also met Mahila Milan, the people who had initiated this process 20 years ago. Everybody reflected on what they saw, what they had learned, and what they planned to take back. The visit had ended with a very deep impact on everybody. There was a great transformation of values, attitudes, and a great optimism of being able to make changes. The senior officials from the railways admitted that when they had ordered the railway demolitions, they just hadn't seen the people inside the structures that obstructed their tracks. Now, they saw fellow Kenyans struggling to build a life for themselves and their children.
So I think it is an eye-opener. Definitely it has broadened my outlook, and it has given me a lot of ideas of what is possible, not only along the railway line, but also within our stations. Because I have come, I have seen.
The senior planner from the Land Ministry was very excited. He felt this was an opportune moment to be in India. He was part of a group that was going to set up the land policy for Kenya, and he hoped to produce one that would serve the interests of all Kenyans. Our leader from the Mungano was very excited. He couldn't believe that he had spent so much time with his government officials, and he hoped that this would continue when he went back. He also wanted the change to occur for his informal market. For Jain Veru and Pamoja Trust, this was an exciting completion of a very challenging and difficult week. For all of us in STI, this visit, like many other exchanges, demonstrates the power of using transformations that have occurred in other cities to be a way of helping problem solving in another city. By bringing this group of very strategically located people from different institutions together to participate in this exchange, they not only get an opportunity to explore a new paradigm, but they go back as a team willing to support each other in changing their institution's way of looking at this process.